Most UFC champions struggle after retirement, but Urijah Faber, he built a multi-million-dollar empire after losing 4 UFC championship fights. While legends like Chuck Liddell and BJ Penn went broke, Faber turned his $9 million net worth into multiple businesses, real estate holdings, and a fight team that produced 4 UFC champions. How does a fighter who never won UFC gold become one of the wealthiest men in MMA? That's what we're breaking down today. Before Urijah Faber became a household name in MMA, he was just a scrappy kid from Sacramento with a relentless work ethic and a dream. Born on May 14, 1979 in Isla Vista, California, Faber wasn't raised in a rich family, but he was surrounded by people who valued hard work and discipline. His parents were free spirits, hippies really, but they weren't slackers. His dad Theo was a civil engineer, and his mom Suzanne worked as a school teacher. That balance between toughness and intelligence would shape the mindset that carried Faber throughout his entire career. Like many future MMA fighters, Faber found his way to the mats through wrestling. He attended Lincoln High School where he became a standout wrestler, and that drive continued into his college years at UC Davis. Now here's the thing, Faber wasn't some Olympic-level prodigy. He wasn't getting recruited by D1 powerhouses, but what he lacked in natural size and strength, he made up for in work ethic and an unbreakable mindset. At UC Davis, Faber became a 2-time NCAA Division I qualifier, competing at 133 pounds. But more importantly, he started realizing that he was built differently from most wrestlers. While many of his teammates saw college wrestling as the final destination, Faber felt like this was just the beginning. He wanted more. After college, Faber could have taken the safe route, become a wrestling coach, working a normal 9-to-5, maybe getting into business early, but something inside him wasn't ready to walk away from competition. So in 2003, he took his first MMA fight. No UFC contract, no big payday, just a $200 check and a burning desire to see if he could hack it in this new sport. And man, could he hack it. Faber racked up wins left and right, fighting in regional promotions and quickly developing a reputation for being one of the most aggressive and exciting lighter weight fighters in the game. Back then, the UFC wasn't paying attention to the smaller guys. They weren't even promoting featherweight fights yet. But that was about to change. In 2006, World Extreme Cage Fighting, the WEC, signed Faber, and this is where things really started to take off. In just his second fight for WEC, Faber won the featherweight championship by submitting Cole Escovedo. Suddenly, he was the face of an entire division. Now this was pre-Conor McGregor, pre-Max Holloway, pre-Volkanovski, back when lighter-weight fighters weren't getting the same respect as the bigger guys. But Faber made people pay attention. His wild, relentless fighting style, combined with his surfer boy charisma, made him an instant star. Fans loved him, women loved him, even Dana White loved him. Over the next few years, Faber became the face of the WEC, defending his title against guys like Joe Pearson, Jeff Curran, and Dominic Cruz. More on that one later. He was a trailblazer for the little guys. But as we all know, in MMA, the highs never last forever. And for Urijah Faber, the next chapter of his career would be defined by something no fighter wants to be known for: coming up short when it mattered most. You see, every MMA fighter dreams of holding championship gold, but for some, that dream becomes a nightmare. And for Urijah Faber, title fights became the ultimate curse. It all started on November 5th, 2008 at WEC 36. Faber stepped into the cage against Mike Brown, the heavy-handed underdog who nobody expected to take him out. But that's the thing about fighting. It only takes one punch to change everything. Midway through the first round, Faber threw an ill-advised spinning elbow, a flashing move that left him wide open. Brown saw the opening, countered with a monstrous right hand, and dropped him on the spot. The crowd gasped. The commentators lost their mind. And just like that, the California Kid was no longer the champion. Losing the belt was bad, but what happened next is what really hurt. Faber got his chance at revenge 7 months later at WEC 41, and this time he was determined not to make the same mistake. He fought smarter, he fought tougher, but Mike Brown was just better that night. Faber broke his hand early in the fight, shattering it so badly that he had to fight the rest of the way barely able to throw a punch. And despite showing insane toughness and going the distance, he lost again. Then, when the WEC merged with the UFC, it felt like a fresh start for Faber. But before that, he had one last shot at the WEC featherweight title. The bad news? He had to fight Jose freaking Aldo. Aldo was at his peak and an absolute killer. And at WEC 48, he put on one of the most brutal beatdowns in title fight history. For 5 rounds, Aldo chopped down Faber's legs like he was hacking at a tree. By the end of the fight, Faber's leg was so swollen it was the size of a watermelon. He could barely stand. But yet, he never quit. He lost the fight, but that toughness made fans love him even more.
I respect Urijah, but no one will take my belt.
Perfect.
It literally felt like a bat was hitting my leg. The ball on the side of my leg from the 2 kicks that landed made it so I couldn't bend my knee. That changed the game for me in that fight.
Oh man, that was a hard one.
I literally was hobbling after the 3rd round. The leg was like a dead body.
Yeah, he had to get carried back to his corner. I mean, they didn't want him using that leg any more than he has to.
Championship round.
Look at his leg. Did you just see that? He picked up his leg, and his leg is welted and swollen. And the swelling is leaking down to his knee. If you look at Urijah's left knee, it is unnaturally swollen.
It was black and blue from my hip to my ankle, and it took about a month and a half to recover, and you know, just thinking about it can get my leg tingling.
This was the beginning of a pattern. Urijah Faber would always get close to the top, but for some reason, he could never quite reach it again. When the WEC finally merged with the UFC in 2011, fans were hyped. It was a new era for lighter weight fighters. No longer were guys like Faber stuck in smaller promotions. They were now under the biggest spotlight in the sport, and if anyone was built to thrive in that environment, it was Urijah Faber. The UFC wasted no time throwing him into a title fight against Dominick Cruz at UFC 132. It was a rematch of their 2007 fight in the WEC where Faber had choked Cruz out in the 1st round. Back then, Cruz was just some kid with a weird stance. But now, he was the UFC bantamweight champion, and he'd completely reinvented himself. This wasn't the same Dominick Cruz, and Urijah was about to find that out the hard way. Leading up to the fight, the trash talk between Faber and Cruz was electric. These two hated each other. Cruz couldn't stand the way that Faber carried himself like an MMA rock star, and Faber thought Cruz was a smug, overconfident nerd with an awkward fighting style.
There's a little more edge on this one, and I'm gonna smack this dude around. It's gonna be ugly.
You're gonna miss a lot. That's what's gonna happen, just like everybody else I fight. He can try to be as tough and as strong as he thinks he is, but he'll miss. And
watch our fights, dude. I've never missed.
You miss a lot, man. Landing it under 30% of anything you throw and throwing minimal strikes, one at a time, not combinations, not moving forward. You survived that fight by moving backwards.
Survive?
Take a step forward, man. Come forward at me.
All right,
bring it.
We'll
Let's
see.
go. Bring
Watch the fight again, Mr. Analyst.
You watch it, man. I beat you for a reason. I have this belt and you don't for a reason.
I caught you with the right hand, then I caught you with the knee.
I beat you unanimously.
The fight itself was a chess match. Faber had moments where he rocked Cruz, but Cruz's footwork was on another level. He was darting in and out, landing clean shots and making Faber miss just enough to stay ahead on the scorecards. After 5 rounds, the judges gave it to Cruz by unanimous decision. And just like that, Faber had lost his UFC title shot. But the UFC wasn't giving up on him. He was still a massive fan favorite, and Dana White knew that as long as he kept winning, he could stay in the title mix. Faber rebounded with a slick submission win over Brian Bowles, setting up another title shot, this time for the interim bantamweight title against Renan Barão at UFC 149. Now here's where things get frustrating if you're a Faber fan, because if Dominick Cruz hadn't torn his ACL, Faber would have gotten his chance at a trilogy fight. But instead, he had to face Renan Barão, a Brazilian monster riding a 29-fight unbeaten streak. It was another tough night for Faber. Barão picked him apart with leg kicks and outpointed him over 5 rounds. Another unanimous decision loss. Another title shot slipped through his fingers. At this point, it was starting to feel like some kind of cosmic joke. He was one of the biggest stars in MMA, he was constantly fighting in title fights, but he just couldn't get over that final hurdle. And yet the UFC still kept him around the top. Most fighters don't get 3 UFC title shots, but somehow Faber earned himself a 4th one in 2016 when he faced Dominic Cruz for the 3rd time at UFC 199. By this time, Faber was 37 years old. He wasn't the same fighter that he used to be. And Cruz had returned from multiple injuries and was still sharp as ever. Faber tried, he really did, but Cruz completely outclassed him for 5 rounds. It was never even close. And when the final bell rang, it was clear. This was Urijah Faber's last shot at UFC gold. 4 UFC title fights, 4 losses. Now, if you're an MMA fan, you know how brutal this sport is. It doesn't care about how much the fans love you, it doesn't care about how much hard work you put in, and it definitely doesn't care about deserving a championship. Some guys just never get that moment, and for Faber, it was time to accept that his legacy would have to be built in a different way. But here's the thing. What most fans don't realize is that Faber was leveraging his championship fights even when losing. Each title bout increased his bargaining power with sponsors, turning $50,000 fight purses into $250,000 plus in total earnings per event. While many fighters struggled to find purpose after their career's end, Faber had been building something behind the scenes that would make him one of the smartest post-fight success stories in MMA history. You see, most fighters think about businesses after they retire. They fight, they make money, and then they suddenly realize, oh crap, I need a plan for life after fighting. Urijah Faber wasn't most fighters. While he was still in his prime, still headlining events, and still chasing that elusive UFC gold, he was already laying the foundation for his future. And it all started with Team Alpha Male. In 2004, Faber took a risk. He was still an up-and-coming fighter, making barely enough to live. But he decided to open his own gym in Sacramento. Most fighters wouldn't even consider this. Running a gym is hard. It's not just about teaching people how to throw a punch, it is a full-on business. You need to rent space, get equipment, hire coaches, handle memberships, market the place. It's a headache that most fighters don't want to deal with. But Faber saw the bigger picture. He didn't just want a place to train, he wanted a factory for champions. A place where he could build a team, create a culture, and attract the best young talent in the world. And that is exactly what he did. Over the years, Team Alpha Male became a hotbed for elite lighter-weight fighters. Future UFC stars like Chad Mendes, Joseph Benavidez, and TJ Dillashaw flocked to train under Faber's leadership. For a while, Team Alpha Male was the camp to be in if you were a featherweight or bantamweight. The gym was churning out contenders and future champions like a conveyor belt. And as the gym's reputation grew, so did its value. By the time that Faber was reaching the end of his fighting career, Team Alpha Male wasn't just a training center, it was a business empire. He had merchandise, seminars, and a massive base of paying customers. His brand wasn't tied to its fighting success, it was built on something much bigger. While most fighters spent their post-fight time recovering, Faber was networking. He saw how poorly fighters managed their careers, how they got screwed over by bad contracts, shady managers, and terrible financial decisions. So what did he do? He created MMA Inc., a fighter management company. He wasn't just building fighters inside the cage, he was building their careers outside of it, helping them secure sponsorships, negotiate contracts that actually make money beyond fight purses. And that was just the beginning. Faber started branching out into real estate, supplements, and apparel. He launched his own clothing brand, Torque, tapping into the MMA fashion trend that brands like Affliction and Tap Out had exploded. He co-founded Combat Culture, a fight-focused lifestyle brand. He invested in supplement companies, capitalizing on the fitness and nutrition market. While most fighters were blowing money on cars and jewelry, Faber was investing in Sacramento real estate that would triple in value. His first commercial property cost $315,000 in 2006 and sold for over $950,000 in 2015. And let's not forget, Faber wasn't just doing all of this behind the scenes. He was still fighting, still headlining cards, still keeping his name relevant while building all of these businesses. Most fighters only think about business once the lights go out. Faber was building his empire while he was still in the spotlight. One of the smartest things Faber ever did was that he leaned into media and branding. Now let's be real, MMA is more than just about winning fights. You need personality, you need a brand, and few fighters understood that better than Urijah Faber. In 2011, Faber was selected as a coach on The Ultimate Fighter opposite his longtime rival, Dominick Cruz. It was perfect. The UFC had been looking for a way to make the smaller weight classes more mainstream, and who better to promote them than Faber? His charisma, his confidence, his chill California bro energy, it all translated perfectly on TV. The season was a massive success. Even though Cruz ended up winning their rematch at UFC 132, Faber's brand skyrocketed. This wasn't just about a fight anymore. It was about entertainment.
To ask questions is, do you still have a rivalry? Do you still have a grudge with Dominick Cruz?
No, I never really took that very serious either. I mean, I was happy to have an enemy because I really didn't have any, you know. Like, our team was pretty cool with everybody. Like, I've always been, you know, Dana said it on our Ultimate Fighter show. He's like, you know, Conor came in all not liking Urijah, but he's a hard guy not to like. You know, he said that actually on the show, and so I was just happy to have an enemy because it was good for hype and everything else.
Good for ratings.
I loved our rivalry. I think it was part of what made my career and a great part of the sport. So I'm excited to see what he does next.
Fondest Dominick Cruz moment.
Oh my gosh, man. There's a bunch, but there was a time where we got put in a very strange situation. There was like a mix-up with the UFC PR team or something. They put us in this San Diego like military program where we were supposed to go do an appearance. It turns out we spent like 6 hours working as a team, celebrating the fallen troops and having to like put all our differences aside for a bigger picture. It was kind of a strange time, but we like let our guard down for a second, and then a couple days later back to enemies.
Faber started doing more analyst work, appearing on UFC pre-shows, and even launching his own podcast. He wasn't just a fighter anymore. He was a full-blown media personality. And when the fights were finally over, that media presence would help him transition into full-time business. Here's where Faber's true genius showed. While fighters like Tito Ortiz and Rampage Jackson tried to parlay their fame into Hollywood careers and failed, Faber was systematically building income streams that would outlast his fighting prime. A lot of fighters retire because they have to. Their bodies give out, they start losing fights, they can't compete anymore. Faber retired on his own terms. His last fight against Brad Pickett wasn't a desperate attempt to stay relevant. It was a farewell tour.
I'm not off into the sunset. This is going into battle, so you kind of have to keep that mindset, keep focused on a tough opponent. Somebody's coming to knock my head off, and you know, I'll take time to soak everything in the aftermath. I just feel like it's time. I've had an amazing career, and I've talked about it before, like the emotional up and down and the kind of the excitement I've been chasing doing this sport is still there a little bit, but not quite as it used to be. I feel very fortunate to have my health, my physical and my mental health, and you know, I've had a great opportunity the whole road, and it's just a perfect time, Sacramento.
And when he walked away in 2016, he didn't just disappear. He immediately shifted full-time into business. The first thing he did was that he expanded Team Alpha Male. He built a state-of-the-art facility in Sacramento, one of the biggest and best MMA gyms in the world. Faber started offering online training programs, licensing deals, and exclusive seminars. The gym was a money-making machine, and all the while, Faber was securing investments in real estate, tech, and cryptocurrency. Fighters usually retire and fade into obscurity. Faber retired and became even more successful. The interesting thing is, Faber did briefly return to the octagon in 2019, knocking out Ricky Simon in just 46 seconds, just to prove that he was still an elite fighter. But this comeback wasn't about needing money or trying to reclaim glory. It was a calculated way to boost his brand value and remind the world who the California Kid was. So how big is Urijah Faber's empire today? His net worth is estimated at $9 million. But his business influence extends far beyond that figure. His fighters have generated over $25 million in UFC purses. His gym membership program brings in consistent six-figure monthly revenue, and his real estate portfolio now includes 12 properties across California. Compare that to former champions who are still fighting in their 40s just to pay bills. Almost every fighter thinks about their next fight. Faber was thinking about the next decade. Most fighters spend all their money on cars and watches. Faber spent his money on businesses and investments. Most fighters work for the UFC. Faber built a brand so the UFC had to work with him. That's why while most former champions are still chasing fights, Faber is building an empire. Urijah Faber didn't need a UFC belt to become a legend. He built a blueprint for fighter entrepreneurship that champions like Henry Cejudo, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Francis Ngannou are now following, creating businesses while still actively competing. He proved that you don't need to be a world champion to be wildly successful, turning his team Alpha Male Gym into a talent factory that produced champions like TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt. Faber's story isn't about failure, it's about adaptation, strategy, and playing the long game. And that is why, long after his last fight, the California Kid is still winning.